the worst that's going to happen is they're either going to say no or like they're not going to respond. I don't need to be so concerned about not getting a response. This is something that I want to do, and I should be proud for even just taking initiative. So I just went for it, and they said they were impressed with just cold emailing and they were looking for people, so we worked from there. But it's just getting through the initial stage of you shouldn't do this, like this is embarrassing, and just sending the email.
Okay, so tell me about how you grew up.
Yeah, so I guess this is the lesser interesting part of my life per se. I grew up in rural Connecticut with 2 brothers. I'm the youngest of 3. So, I mean, we were all just very big. I guess we were just a really big, like, sports family, and we all grew up playing sports, watching sports. It was just, and our neighborhood was just full of boys, too, so it was just a very, like, boy sport, like, man community in that way.
Which sports?
I played baseball and then basketball. Basketball probably for the longest time, and then in high school I played golf as well. So, I think I still play golf the most, but I think I like baseball and basketball better in terms of entertainment value in that way.
And which sports were people watching? Basketball
and football, just because, I mean, it's just such a big part of the culture that you can't avoid it.
Like UConn? University of
Yes,
Connecticut?
UConn, yeah, good. They actually just
Wildcats?
Huskies.
Oh.
Close. Yeah, well, yeah, so we just watched that, and then it was just always kind of sports, and then I also grew up definitely the most, like, artisty of the family. I think when I was really young, my mom bought me this, like, little briefcase of, like, crayons and stuff. I wanted to be an illustrator at one point. Like, I think I wanted to do clothes stuff for, like, caricatures, and then eventually there was one case I was playing, like, video games one day, and I was, like, really wanted to get to the next level, and she saw that I was so into it, and I also would get so upset that I couldn't beat this video game, and she ended up buying me a piano, because she's like, I'm just going to funnel this into something that could be productive instead of video games. So I played piano and trumpet throughout my childhood as well. And I've always been musical in that way. I still read about it all the time, and it's been a big part of my life in that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Which part of Connecticut is it?
So the town I grew up in is called Higganum. So it's about south of Hartford, 30 minutes, which is the capital. So it's kind of central, but very rural. I mean, there's no more than 1,000, 1,100 people in it, and everybody kind of knows each other. Very rural, like, kids drive tractors to high school and in the middle of farmland. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What kind of farms?
I have no clue. I was not on the farmland. I didn't live on the farmland, but it was a big part of the community in that way, to be rural and, like, redneck per se, I guess.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you lived in the town?
Yeah. I just lived in, like, this neighborhood where essentially it was just houses of kids, me and my brother's ages, and everybody kind of moved there at the same time, and we all grew up together and just lived with each other.
And did your parents work in Hartford?
They did, actually. Yeah, they worked just some corporate jobs in Hartford and did stuff like that while we grew up.
Huh. So it's kind of like a commuter town to Hartford for people.
Sure, yeah. Nobody really works in Haddam unless you're just, like, a teenager kind of doing odd jobs or working at, like, a restaurant or something, but very little people actually work inside Higganum or Haddam because it's just so small. There's nothing there.
And mostly, like, white, middle class?
Yeah, definitely a lot of white, not a lot of diversity in that way. It's pretty much white, middle class, through and through, yeah.
Huh. Mm-hmm. And so what does redneck mean?
It's very, like, traditional rural. It's almost like, I don't even know, just the stereotype of the farm you get with the kids wearing the flannels and the jeans and the boots, and, like, they're talking in the tongues, and almost, like, kind of a little offensive in that way, and they're very, like, it's not a diverse town, so it's just the typical almost white American, almost they want to be Southern, almost, I think is how I could describe it, which is not the best description, but it does it.
So it's kind of like Trump country vibe?
Sure, yeah. Connecticut's a very blue state, but it's kind of got some Trump country aspects in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think it's just like cities versus rural, whereas for foreigners who like coming to the US for the first time, you think like Texas or whatever is like rednecks, and then New England would all be not, but it's actually like if you go to Houston, it's like very liberal, but then it's versus like you can be in the countryside, well, you can be in like Maine and have like gun loving, like super redneck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Austin's like an extremely liberal city in that way, and they've got this community of artists, and they're very, progressive leaning. But like New Hampshire, for example, which you probably think is very blue, where other people think still has a minimum wage of $7.25 or something, which is now worth essentially nothing. So it just depends, really. It's kind of everywhere mixed, and I mean, the map which you get, which is just red and blue states, is obviously not definitive of what people are living like inside of those states, everywhere at least.
Interesting. Okay, so it's very like gun loving.
Oh yeah.
Well. Where are you from?
Mm-hmm. They do like guns, yeah.
So it's like very Republican or mixed?
Like it's mixed, obviously. I think where I grew up was kind of definitely more left leaning in that way. We were not gun loving or people like that, but I think the majority of the town is pretty right leaning in that way, just because of the community I think it's built and the people that are around there. It's very closed off in a way. There's a lot of people that if you grow up in the town and you don't leave after high school, you're pretty much going to live in that town for the rest of your life. There's a lot of people that do not leave, so it's like very closed off kind of rural area in that way. And
would they have a good quality life, do you think?
I think so. There's nothing wrong with the quality of life. It's definitely a very privileged area in that way, and I recognize that in my growing up. But I think they have a good quality of life in that way. Maybe not in terms of like social or seeing, popping that bubble of, the world. But I think they do have a good, at least economic quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are you saying privileged compared to like other places in the US, like with inner city violence and drugs and...
Yes, yeah, definitely privileged in that respect. There's never really any incidents of big violence or crime or, drugs, anything like that. Definitely privileged in that way, in the grand scope of America, for sure, certainly.
And are people quite religious there?
Yeah, I think they're mainly Catholic. I believe I grew up Catholic. My family is Catholic, but I think the majority of them are Catholic or Protestant as well. A lot of people do, go to church, and since it's so small, you kind of see everybody around on Sunday. It's kind of small and religious in that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
So did you go to church growing up?
I did go to church growing up. Yeah. I'm not super religious anymore, but it was like my parents wanted to at least give me the option to be in kind of in a religious community that they had grown up and come to love. And I totally understand that. I just think it was not for me as I got older and kind of came to my own, upbringing in that way and understanding of everything. But I did go to church growing up, yeah.
Where are your ancestors from?
I believe on my dad's side from Poland and Germany on my dad's side, and then my mom's side from Poland and Ireland, maybe. One of my ancestors is Frederick Law Olmsted. He's the architect of Central Park in New York. So that's like the one fun fact I have about the family lineage. But otherwise, I think it's pretty basic European, Polish, German, and then Irish in that way. I'm sure there's some British mixed in there as well.
And they came like hundreds of years ago.
I'm not sure actually. I think my great grandfather on my mother's side actually came in the early 1900s, I think, or maybe late 1800s. But on my dad's side, I honestly have no clue. But I think not hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but relatively recent, probably 19th century, 20th.
And did both your parents grow up in Connecticut?
My mom did. My mom grew up outside of New Haven in kind of similar, smaller town, but my dad grew up in New York, in Troy, New York.
And what did they both do for work, or what do they do?
The majority of their life, they worked in insurance. My mom still works in insurance right now out in Hartford, but I believe, so my dad works right now in public schools. He does some finance stuff for public school districts and budgets and stuff like that. But for the most part of their life, they worked in insurance.
And what do they want for you and your brothers?
Oh, I think they just wanted us to, I mean, I don't know about specific career paths, but they obviously always made it clear that they wanted us to feel stable and secure, and that they would always be there for us regardless of the career path we picked. I think maybe that had steered towards some career paths preferred to others, but overall I think there was just an underlying theme of they just wanted us to feel like stable and that we could live the life that we wanted to live regardless of career path. But yeah, maybe it steers towards more like financially prosperous jobs, but I had never really felt that myself, but yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then what was school like for you?
As a kid, I enjoyed school growing up. I mean, once again, you know pretty much everybody in your school. My graduating class was 130 kids, so not very many in the scope of American high schools. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I was always pretty diligent and pretty good at school, I guess. That sounds completely arrogant, but I had always kind of made school a priority of mine and was trying to participate and did sports and stuff. But I definitely liked the school with less responsibilities as compared to university. I think it was a lot more fun, and it was just it was a great part of my life, for the most part, at least, yeah.
And you had good friends.
I did. Yeah, a lot of good friends. One of them's actually coming to visit me this week I grew up with him in preschool, and he's coming to visit in London, so he's showing him around the UK, which would be really fun.
Cool.
But yeah, a lot of good friends, and a lot of them I'm still in touch with and talk to all the time, visit them, so yeah.
And you could get away with being like studious without being given a hard time. Without
being studious? Like, I didn't
you could be studious and not worry about being picked on or whatever for that.
Yeah. I think there was a large portion of my school, and at least my grade, was pretty, like, studious of themselves. We were pretty smart and went off to some good universities, so it's all public school, but we all went off to some good public universities or private, and no, I never felt that way. Yeah, everybody was kind of studious in their own way. And even if they weren't studious in school, they were doing stuff. They had their own businesses, or were fixing cars, or doing, like, detailing. So everybody had their own kind of lane. And I think everybody kind of respected that in a way.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
It's just, like, hardworking, well-balanced kids.
Sure, in that way, I guess. Yeah, everybody was kind of doing their own thing. Everybody knew their strengths, I think, at sort of a younger age, even if not specifically what they wanted to do. Kids knew if school was for them or not for them, if that makes sense.
So how old were you when Trump was elected?
I was... so that was what? November of 2016? So I was 12? I was 12 when Trump was elected. So I was in 6th grade.
And... oh my god, you're so much younger than me. Okay, yeah, so I was living in New York at that time.
Oh, no kidding.
And it was so interesting. Someone just sent me this, I don't know, this, like, footage of CNN, like, them saying, like, this, like, montage of them being like Hillary's got it in the bag, like, all the, and then slowly how it was like, oh my god, I think he's going to win. And yeah. I remember that period so vividly. But, like, what, because it was different, right, to other elections. Well, I guess you wouldn't know because you weren't...
I think I still do have a perspective on it. I do remember it very vividly because, like, I mean, when you're 10 to 12 years old, you don't really know much about politics or just the dynamic in that way. So you're kind of just taking what you hear from, like, your parents or your parents' friends, or even, in my case, my older brothers and stuff. So, but I remember just my parents were never, like, advocates for him. They never really, like, supporters. But I remember coming into, like, school I'm in middle school. Like, I get off the middle school bus one day, and there's, like, a group of kids that, like, have Trump flags and are wearing Trump merch, and they're, like, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I'm like, how do you even know what you're, like, supporting? Even I had no idea, but I was like, this makes no sense. Like, what? I didn't understand why a group of 12-year-olds would rally for a presidential election when it's probably just their parents, like, shoving them into this kind of group of, you know, political advocacy. It made no sense to me at the time. Yeah.
And do you remember having thoughts on it, or like would you talk about it at school? Or
I think I would. I would always be very, like, anti at the time, as a lot of Americans did. My mom was like, we're gonna leave the country if he wins. Obviously we didn't, but like I was like, yeah, no, we're moving, like we're leaving. I remember telling all the kids, I was like, no, we're actually moving right now. And they'd be like, no way, you're not moving. I'd be like, yeah we are. Like, I obviously didn't want to give up my bluff, but like I remember just telling kids that I would be moving, and it's like, yeah, there's no way, I don't want him to win, and stuff like that.
Wow, where were you gonna move to?
Oh god, I have no clue. Probably some place, and I think my parents really love the Caribbean, so they would have just perched out in some island down there where it's warm. My dad really loves warm places, so anywhere down there he would have just hopped out to.
Huh. So what was it about him that your parents really didn't like?
Oh, I think just a lot of the comments, and it's just misogyny and racism and exploiting the democratic system for something that's not the good of democracy. I think it's just blatantly clear that this is not, I mean, it just didn't seem like a political race at the time. It just felt very, you know, power hungry, and I think it was a lot of really harmful rhetoric that especially that has continued, obviously, and I think that was just something they were not in favor of. Like, it was not anything that resonated as it did with millions of other people, but it was just a really sharp turn that they were not in support of. And especially since they have friends and members of the community that are, you know, of different races or different identities and stuff, it's really hard to listen to that and be like, and be in support of it, you know?
So did it become quite polarizing at school?
Yeah, it became polarizing everywhere, in a way. I very distinctly remember it. I think it was just kind of a nightmare in a way. Everything was pretty polarized. I mean, especially in rural towns, everybody's got the signs up in their front yard. It's almost like staking your claim of who you want to vote for or what you want to do. So it was like you see a lot of these signs and stuff, and then obviously kids not in support, kids would go steal the signs or vandalize stuff, and it's like it was very polarizing. And I think, sure, I probably played a part in that, in not being, you know, whatever, empathetic or like open ears in that way to that group of people, but it was very polarizing, and I think it's something I definitely had reflected on later years of, you know, just coming to be a grown up and political, like, I don't know, actor in that way.
And is it still like that now in the US, or worse?
So that's an interesting question. I think,
like in
your
world of the US, no.
I think so. Oh, absolutely. In my world, certainly. I think people may not be as outspoken at this time because, I mean, the election is the same thing that we've seen before, and people have almost just kind of dropped the stakes in that way. So, but I think in my world, it's pretty much like pick a side. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know, or members that I'm close with that will, like, you know, not associate with you if you do go and, like, vote for Trump or do something like that. There's a lot of people who place a really high stakes on whether you vote or not, and then who you vote for in that same way.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite sad.
It's really sad. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking because I read your article on political beliefs.
Sure.
Being moral beliefs,
sure.
Which was so interesting.
Yeah.
How if someone says, yeah, it's like, oh, I want to vote for Trump. It's like, oh, so you're a racist.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not. That's even happened to me about, like, the podcast being like, oh, yeah, like, I want to be like Joe Rogan and be like, oh, so you're a racist then? I'm
so
like,
you hate
what?
women. Yeah, exactly.
So, wait, yeah, can you explain what that is?
I think looking back, I even have a different perspective now compared to even when I wrote that article. I think getting a lot of feedback on it and reading more just on the topic, I think there takes a certain level of privilege to be able to remove morality from politics in that way, or political statements, because there are a lot of high stakes for a lot of, like, even just marginalized group and even women and people of different races and identities in, like, political actions and elections. So I think it definitely does take a certain amount of privilege to be able to remove that or step aside from that situation. But I still think that deeming everything as a moral statement in politics is a death trap, and I think it even goes back to what I wrote about, like, reason. There takes a certain level of, like, emotional capacity and empathy to be able to constructively create, like, a political environment that is, you know, that moves forward and is beneficial for these groups of people, rather than that's just, you know, separating and polarizing and extremely harmful, which is what we've seen so far. And I think my beliefs are obviously still evolving almost every day with what I read on it, but it's a bad situation, and I think people understand how bad the situation is. They just don't want to understand what they need to do to fix it in that way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think that the article was kind of like, oh, this is sad that this is how the world is.
Sure.
Kind of
yeah.
ended on, like, a kind of negative point, which I don't really have that view, and I think that's come from this podcast, like, talking to all different people, and because there's the association thing as well, right? Like, I was scared, like, oh my God, if I talk to, you know, I had a very conservative prime minister, and I'm like, oh my God, are people going to, like, not talk to me anymore because of that or something?
Yeah.
But then it's like, I've also had a guy, a, like, heroin addict, and, like, a guy who just got out of prison.
Sure.
And no one would look at me and be like, oh, Delia, so do you just support killing people because you have, you know, it's like, that's crazy. So it's weird with political views, we kind of, it's like, oh, if you're associated with that person. But it's like, I'm just interested in people, and I'm asking them about their lives. But what I've found out is all my fears of, like, oh my God, it will upset people, or they won't, which is like a people-pleasing thing. It's like, oh, people won't accept me or something.
Sure.
It's like, that's actually not the case. Like, most people are open-minded, and even people who I wouldn't expect, like my left-wing American friend listened to the conservative prime minister and, like, loved it. He was like, wow, this is so interesting. And, like, I love, you know, so it's almost like we create these barriers where they don't necessarily exist.
Yeah.
But then there's also an art to getting curious. Like, I was that person in the US as well. I mean, generally I could be open-minded because people are different, and it's like, whoa, what's it like to grow up there? Like, I have no idea. Sure. But with guns, I was, like, so aggressive, and, like, how could you think this about guns? But now I'm kind of like, no, I'd rather just be curious and, like, get to know.
Sure.
And if everyone can just, you know, go with curiosity and allow people to, like, change their views and evolve as they get new information. Which we don't let them do that. It's like, oh, they said this 20 years ago. And it's like, yeah, but aren't they a human who's allowed to, like, learn and evolve? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just another facet of empathy in kind of a political environment. But I think, especially American politics, they were almost optimized for, like, a situation like this where people are going to make controversial statements, or they're going to say nothing on a really important issue, and people will just continue to vote for them. I just watched a TED Talk with Andrew Yang, if you know Andrew Yang, the politician, and he said it was something like that. There was this issue that a Republican politician didn't speak on, or he said something controversial on, and, like, his polling numbers actually went up, and he won the election despite the fact that, you know, it might be counterintuitive what he said, or it might have been offensive what he said. And that, you know, it's optimized for a kind of divide in, like, a controversial, almost like a commercial form of politics, in sort of splitting into two parties in this way, or the electoral system in that way. It's kind of optimized for this sort of, crisis that we're talking about right now.
Mm. And that's, like, how the media behaves as well.
Sure.
Which, that was, like, so mind-blowing to me when I moved. Like, I didn't know what Fox was or CNN or like, and I didn't know. I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting for me to like go to the gym and watch like Fox and then CNN and like just, it's like entertainment rather than...
It's ridiculous because you'll see something that happens on one of them and then in 10 minutes they'll be showing the clip of what happened on the other one, saying, look at these clowns over there, what are they doing? It's just, it's almost like darkly funny in a way that it's just so disappointing, you know. To me, at least, I think it's disappointing. Other people will defend the media and kind of will defend either side in the same way that they do with politicians, but I just think it's kind of, you know, pointless to do that, especially when it's so counterproductive.
Okay, so back to you.
Cool.
What was your... Sorry, it's just like America's like another planet to the rest of the world. It's just like...
I mean, the rest of the world is another planet to America. So, yeah.
Okay, what did you want for your life in high school, which was only like 2 years ago?
Sure, yeah. I think I was kind of divided. I think there was a part of me that knew I always wanted to do something creative or unconventional and be a writer or work with books or music or artistry in that way. There was one part of me that wanted to do that, but then there was the other part that was like, you know, just go and make money and then you can do that on the side. Just secure yourself a living first and then you can pursue that later. So I was really debating whether or not to go to college after high school. It was a big debate for me. I didn't know if I wanted to spend the money. I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was so divided. And then I kind of pushed it off to the last minute to make a decision. And then I eventually just said, you know, a degree, as much as like financial debt and student loans kind of suck, a degree is never really going to hurt you in terms of professional standing. So I'll just go and try to crank out this degree with my community college credits and just hopefully figure myself out along the way. Just give me a little buffer and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So that's what I did. But I was definitely very split between, you know, playing it safe and kind of playing it risky and just going out and exploring in that way.
And what would you have done?
Going back?
As in, if on the path of exploring, what would that have looked like?
At the time, I really wanted to be a screenwriter. I wanted to write for movies. So I was in these online communities and writing and stuff and taking all these online classes, and I was really interested in it. And I knew a few people, so I probably would have done that or moved somewhere and done that, whether it be New York or California, and then picked up other jobs and just kind of floundered along the way. But that's kind of where I think that's where I would have started, at least. And who knows where that would have taken me, but...
And were your parents putting pressure on you either way?
No, I don't think so. I think they knew what I was interested in. I think they always knew that I was kind of an artistry kind of guy and that I always had these like creative interests. So they weren't putting pressure on me in that way. I think they wanted me to get a degree, but I don't think they cared what that degree was in at all. So I think maybe a little bit towards the college degree, but I don't think they cared what that was in. Looking back, I think we would both say maybe, you know, should have tried the other thing first, but obviously no regrets at this point, and I think we both just recognize that.
Really? Why?
I don't think the university like system or just format has been conducive to me or my like career. I feel like I've done a lot more outside of university than I have inside university. It almost just feels like a thing that I have to do to get the degree, so I can just continue on with my life and stuff. But I think in terms of pricing and how much it costs and what I've really gotten out of it, I think I would have maybe done something differently had I had the option.
Huh. Even though you're here now in the UK?
Sure. Well, I'm very grateful. There's obviously a lot of things that have come with the university, whether it be traveling and getting all these new experiences, or I met my girlfriend in university, so a lot of good friendships and relationships that have come out of it. I'm very grateful. But I also understand that I'm not afraid to recognize that there has been some parts that have not been super, helpful to me, or there have been parts that I haven't liked as well. But I am very grateful, and I'm split in that way as well, if I were to go back in this imaginary situation.
Interesting. Did your brothers both go to college?
Yeah. My middle brother actually just graduated on Sunday. So he just graduated his bachelor's, and then my older brother graduated a few years ago. So yeah, everybody in the family has been to college.
And are they creative as well, your brothers?
No, not really. My oldest brother works in accounting, and then my middle brother is like a math student, and he wants to be a teacher. So I guess he's definitely more social, and his kind of social creativity and building relationships is really his strength in that way. But otherwise, not really. I was always kind of the creative one in that sense.
And doing the community college stuff at school, that was just because you were like advanced through.
Yeah, I was just kind of ahead, and I was able to pick up some classes through the community college, and it ended up helping me big time in terms of getting through this degree, at least. Yeah.
In philosophy as well?
They were just varying credits. I took a business law course. I did some economics stuff, some politics and philosophy, but kind of varied. It was just whatever I was interested in. I didn't need any high school credit, and I didn't know that it was going to transfer over, so I just kind of took whatever I wanted at that time.
Huh. And then why did you choose George Washington and philosophy?
I chose George Washington because I really wanted to be in a city. I thought the city vibe was something I really needed. I needed like other people, stuff going on, stuff to just walk around and see and kind of explore. Just a more like active environment, because growing up in such a small place, it's really hard to get out there and do stuff like that without traveling and going like to actually make a real big effort to be a part of that. And I just wanted to be able to do that every single day and casually and really make it a part of my life. So I chose George Washington because I really love D.C. and it's just a beautiful city and so much stuff and monuments and beautiful places. But I didn't choose philosophy at first. Originally, I was an international affairs major, so I wanted to study politics and, I don't know, diplomacy, international kind of relations in that way. And I for lack of a better word, like I hated it. I thought it was so boring. Like the economics and everything was really not it for me. And the numbers and crunching, just kind of the technical parts of it, I really didn't like. I thought the curriculum was just too stringent and too boring. But at the time, I had been reading like Marcus Aurelius and a lot of the Stoics and a lot of other ancient philosophers just on the side, just for my reading habit. And I had started to get into some of Ryan's work at the time as well. And I was like, why don't I just go and study philosophy? Because I really enjoy it. Like, if I'm already doing this already, why don't I just get my degree for it and enjoy it while I'm doing it, rather than sucking it up through this degree that might have the same, economic value at the end of it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. What kind of stuff did you read growing up?
I read a lot growing up. Mainly fiction in that way. I went through a big Stephen King phase when I was like in my early teens, I guess, but a lot of fiction. I didn't really read much nonfiction or philosophy until the end of high school. And I kind of stumbled upon this sort of, I guess, self-help philosophy wave that was becoming really popular during the pandemic. Because obviously people were looking for such like a solace or, a home away from home in the pandemic, and it became really popular. So I stumbled upon that, and that's how I kind of got into nonfiction, philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, and other sort of, I guess, philosophy, psychology, self-help kind of fusion books in that way.
Huh. What else? Or what were some of the initial ones you read?
So I read Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein, which was a political science book about, obviously, what we just talked about, which was really impactful on me kind of developing the beliefs I have right now. It was like, I remember it was one of the first books I really read, and it was like, whoa, and I immediately gave it to my mom to read, because I thought it would be it's just such an important, like, thing to understand and can, conceptualize in being an American at that time. So I read that. I read Epictetus's Discourses at that time. I read a lot of Seneca, so those are obviously three big Stoics. And then I tried to read some Kant and other boring philosophy, John Locke, and a lot of those revolutionary ones, Hobbes and Rousseau, and I didn't like that as much. But I was really interested in philosophy, and kind of, because it was so stigmatized for me at the time that it's just so old and nothing's really helpful, or it's boring, the degree's worthless, it's just kind of all these old white guys chatting with each other. But I guess seeing how it was being applied during the pandemic really helped me conceptualize that there are uses for it for everybody, because everybody will have a different interpretation of it coming from their background and where they're from. So that's kind of how I got into it and started to perceive philosophy in a different light, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, wait. So the pandemic, that's when you were at school, finishing school?
I was still in high school, yeah. So it was about end of my sophomore year to my senior year of high school. Yeah.
Oh my god. So you missed out on tons, did you? Or what was it like then?
I missed out on my junior prom, but otherwise not much. Like, it was phased in, so some kids would go into school some days, some kids would stay at home. But, I mean, mainly for the end of my sophomore year at least, it was all virtual. Then they just slowly brought kids back. Everybody's wearing masks and social distance. It was not the same, but they did the best they could. I mean, the props to them. It must have been absolutely brutal for these teachers and administrators to try to organize this. But, like, it was a little easier as well because everybody knew that, like, everybody else is just so tired and, like, this is just so brutal for everybody. Like, learning through a computer is horrible, especially when you do it every day of the week. So it was kind of phased in that way, and it was a little bit easier, but at the same time, like, socially, it was probably a little brutal for kids in that manner, I guess. But yeah, we just slowly phased back, and then by my senior year, everything was normal.
That would have been really polarizing as well, was it? People's views on, because did it not become like a political thing, like vaccines and masks and stuff? The vaccines and the masks, and everybody kind of was very strong opinions about that. Kids at school, obviously, get in trouble for not wearing their masks, or you couldn't go back if you had a certain number of vaccines and stuff. So kids would obviously, like, protest that and try to not wear their masks, but then obviously they just get in trouble because it's state guidelines and stuff. Can't really argue with that in that way. Interesting. Okay, so for you didn't feel like it was the worst in terms of missing, like, social stuff? Or
no, not really. I mean, I'm kind of more of an introverted guy myself, but I really took it on myself to kind of explore what I was interested in. For me, it was essentially just a few months or maybe even a year to just kind of do whatever I wanted, study whatever I wanted, to read whatever I wanted. I watched a lot of movies in that time. That's how I got into, like, a lot of filmmaking stuff. But it was just a really formative time to see what I was interested in, because nobody else was, like, everybody was really dealing with their own stuff at that time. So I wanted to take the time and really better myself while I could before I had to go back to school and be normal and social and stuff again.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the decision to come to London about? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I think I really made it on a whim. It was going to be a free semester where my grades didn't count, and I could still make progress towards my degree and graduate early. And then my girlfriend was over here in Oxford, so it was like kind of a freebie. We would get to travel, and I'd get to see other stuff and get this free semester. And I was also doing work at the time still for Brass Check, and I really wanted to start up my own kind of platform and put out my own writing. But I had always never felt like I had the time to do that at home, so I thought maybe this would be a time for me to step away and obviously do and see some other stuff, but I could really put out my own writing as well. I'd have the time. I mean, school is still school. Obviously, I still respected it, but it's not going to be as demanding as at home. So I thought it would just be a good balance and almost a break from being overwhelmed just with university at home.
And has it worked out like that?
It has. It's been very nice, I think. Traveling and just being in a different place is something that people don't value enough, I think. And meeting all these different people, or living in a different place, I should say, is extremely valuable and formative. And interacting with people with different cultures and perspectives, I think, is something so crucial to developing, like, a well-rounded, like, mindset and worldview, and just being more empathetic and open. I think it's something that I didn't value as much, but now looking back, I think I wouldn't trade this opportunity for the world, because I've been so productive, but I've also been changed so much in that way.
Cool. Where have you traveled to?
So I've been to Italy, France. I traveled a lot of France. I went to Lisbon, which was fun. I went to Stockholm, Sweden, which was a lot of fun. And then, where else did we go? Geneva. I went to Geneva for a day. And then I just came back from Cardiff in Wales, which was surprisingly good, actually. I was surprised by it. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of good food as well.
I don't know if anyone's ever said that about Cardiff before.
That's what I was thinking. I thought it was just going to be like another UK like city, but the food was actually like phenomenal. They have a lot of great restaurants up there. And like...
Wow, okay. And had you travelled much growing up?
Like, mainly just along the East Coast. We would travel from back and forth to Florida and stuff. And maybe around New England area. We took some vacations out to like the Caribbean or islands, mainly just down south from where we lived. So anywhere in a straight line south along the East Coast or in the Caribbean was where we traveled to. But nothing extensive or nothing across the Atlantic in that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it was your first time going to all these places?
Yeah. This was my first time in the UK and in Europe in general. So it was a lot of fun. I was very grateful that I got to do it, especially since it's so much cheaper to travel while you're over here compared to making the trek like from America to London or Europe. It's a lot easier to get around, at least while you're over here.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so at what point did you write to Ryan Holiday? How did that come about?
So I wrote to him, oh God, when was this? This was the end of my first year of college. I was looking for research in philosophy, like academic philosophy, so I wanted to go and like just be a professor or study more philosophy in depth. So I reached out to all these people for research positions in D.C., in Connecticut, wherever. And like it was just a no all around. It was no, they're full, no, they didn't have any opportunities, and I just got pretty much rejected for I don't know how many positions. But then I was like, I don't really want to cut it off here, you know? I don't want to take this. I had a job at the time for the summer working in corporate insurance internship, which I was not too thrilled about, but so I was like, why don't I just keep trying and see who else I could reach out to? And I mean, Ryan was the first name that thought to my head in terms of like commercial philosophy in that sense, or mainstream philosophy. So I was like, let's see what I can do over there if I can contribute anything. So I sent him an email essentially just saying like I'm looking for any sort of research opportunities or opportunities to help with the brand. Like I don't need to be paid, just if there's anything. And then they got back to me I think a month later and said they were interested, and we went from there.
So you just got his email off his website?
Somewhere on his website there's his email. I can't remember where it was, but like yeah, his email's up there, and I searched for it and emailed him. Yeah.
And had you read his books?
Oh, this is bad luck for me, but I hadn't read the books at the time. But I was very familiar with like Daily Stoic and the blog and everything. Okay. So I was very familiar with his internet writing, and yeah. I was like, I really like this, and just kind of went for it. Yeah.
No, that's great. Because often I'm like, oh, I really want to contact this person, but then I'm like, oh, I need to read every single book they've ever written. And when they've written like 10 books that are 800 pages, yeah. I'm like, okay, I guess it's going to be like in 10 years' time that I contact them.
Yeah, no. I think the thing with me was the worst that's going to happen is they're either going to say no, they're full, or like they're not going to respond. And a lot of people, even with me, like if you check your email, how much time are you spending on a certain email? What? Maybe 10 seconds if you're not responding? So that's just 10 seconds of their day that I'm maybe bothering, and I'm not even bothering them in that way. So I was like, I don't need to be so concerned about not getting a response. This is something that I want to do, and I should be kind of proud for even just taking initiative. So I just went for it, and they said they were like impressed with just cold emailing, and they were looking for people. So we went on a trial period and worked from there. But it's just getting through the initial stage of you shouldn't do this. Like, this is embarrassing. And just sending the email, you know?
Cool. And the email was really basic.
Mm-hmm. Nothing more than, 4 sentences. It was like, this is who I am, this is where I go to school. I'm looking for research and whatever. I don't even need to be paid. If you have anything, please let me know, and I'd like to discuss further. That was very basic. I can probably find it somewhere.
Cool. And did you contact many other, because like, are there many other like commercial philosophy people?
Not really. I don't remember. I'm sure there were some smaller podcasts or people working out there that I got in touch with, but this was like the big one. And it was one that I was really interested in. Once I sent the email, I was like, oh, my, like, this would be so cool. Like, what if I could just do this? And, like, when I got the response, I remember I was on a plane coming back from vacation with my family, and I got the response. I was like, oh, my God, like, this is... And then I texted my girlfriend. I was like, this is... Like, this could change everything. Like, this is a huge opportunity. And she was like, all right, calm down. Like, you don't need to get so excited about this. But I was like, no, this is something really important to me. And, yeah... But this was definitely the big one in terms of reaching out. Yeah.
And because you were specifically interested in stoicism.
Yeah, I used to be really, really, really big in stoicism, so this was like right up my alley. I'd already read everything and at least was familiar with it as compared to having to read everything to get started with the job. So yeah, it was really right up my alley in that way. Yeah.
Amazing. I have one of the books. My little brother gave it to me. It's like a more recent one. The more recent one. It's the cover's red. Oh, Lives of the Stoics.
Lives of the Stoics, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was that before you were there?
That was before I was there. I think that was like a year or two before I got there. But yeah, that's a great book. It's pretty like nonfiction, almost biographies of the Stoics. It's definitely one of the more just heavy nonfiction books he's written. Yeah.
Yeah, Epictetus. I love his Only the Educated Are Free.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read anything that he's written, but I just...
Yeah, they are very
no,
quotable,
he
though.
was a slave, and that he said that.
That's how people, like, know about them, though. That's how they got so popular, because, like, they're so quotable, and there's all of these, like, even just social media tags going around of these quotes, and, like, just, I mean, pictures maybe overlapped with the pandemic. It just resonated with so many people, and it was just so repeatable and so actionable for people in everyday lives. That's how they got so popular, and that's how this is what it is right now, you know?
So what were you looking for when you wanted it? So it was mainly like you didn't want to do this insurance summer job. You had to do something over summer. You wanted experience like related to philosophy. Yeah.
I still did the insurance job. I did both of them actually. So I just kind of did my writing at nighttime. Got used to that. But I was looking for anything. I was looking for anything that came across my plate. I was just ready to like interact with these creative people who had been successful and where I could learn something, even if it was, oh, I don't want to do this, or, you know, this isn't for me. I just wanted to learn more about what that path looks like and if I was a good fit for it or if the work was interesting to me. So I was really open to anything that would have come across my door, I would have taken, no matter like how big or small it was.
Huh. Okay, so you're trying to work out, like, could I have a career?
Could I actually do this? Yeah. Is there a way for me to do this? That's not just like scrambling for, you know, article submissions in newspapers or journals. Like, could I actually get my way into a big portion of this industry? Yeah.
And you were considering academia as well?
I was, but as soon as I took this position, I think that kind of dropped out the door. As soon as I got an opportunity, I was like, I should really pursue this to the fullest, because if I let it go, I'll probably never get an opportunity like this again. So I was like, I really should just make the most of it and try to capitalize on everything I can, whether it just be connections or learning or whatever I take from my writing. Just make the most of it, you know?
And how has it been?
It's been like everything I could have wished for and more. It's been absolutely like amazing. I think I've worked with so many great people who've been extremely helpful. And I've learned so much about, you know, the writing, the creative process, but also about how, like, I should handle myself in an industry like this. I think I've just learned so much. And especially as a young person, still studying and still trying to essentially figure out where to go after studying, I think it's been so beneficial in that way. I really couldn't ask for anything more in this position.
Huh. So what does that mean, like how you should handle yourself?
I mean, I got a lot of lessons along the way, but the first one was like, content is like a really small world and people know each other. So if you go around like talking or looking, because I was really hustling at the time and really trying to just get to know as many people as possible or try to work with as many people. And like, I would reach out to people that would know people in the company, and they'd be like, "Oh, content, small world, you shouldn't do that," and it'd just be like embarrassing because it was all beneficial at the time. I was just trying to help myself, but I was like, no, I didn't mean to like harm anybody, but I would just really, I was a little too ambitious at the time. What? And I didn't realize I'm a small fish in an even smaller pond.
What, like trying to get more work or something? Or...
Even just like to talk to them. I didn't even want small work. I had enjoyed my position, or was just trying to use the leverage of working for this company to talk to people or just get more insights on how this worked. And I think people probably just took that the wrong way or ran with it, but it was obviously no issue at all. But like, it was just, I need to learn that people talk, content is a small world, and that like you need to handle you're a professional now, essentially. Like, you're not just a kid. Like, we're treating you like a professional. You need to be an adult and be an actual writer here, not just someone hustling for work. You need to step up to the plate.
So how would you do it differently now?
Just take it a lot. Actually, I think I would just try to take it slower and savor what was happening rather than trying to just keep push forward to see if I could do something bigger or better or really be a part of it. I think I should have just, especially in the first like few weeks or something, I was just so excited to be a part of it that I just kind of got a hold of myself. But I really should have just taken it in and learned to just been the adult that they had asked me to be, you know.
Wait, okay, I don't get it. So it's like because you were they were like, stop telling everyone you're working here or something.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, you just work, you're just a part of this now. Like, you do this, you can tell people, but like, I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but it was something along the lines of, yeah, like, I think I reached out to someone or maybe I'd said my position wrong, or said that I worked like directly with Ryan Holiday or something like that. People had taken it the wrong way, but it was just like, just man up and do your job. Like, stop doing the talking, stop doing the work. And that was the lesson I learned. Just if I'm going to be a professional, you gotta be a professional. And if you're going to be a writer, you know. And
what were you trying to get out of the other meetings?
Just more people to talk to and more people to learn from. It was nothing harmful, and they obviously realized that this was not a big issue at all. But it was just me learning, like, there's a limit to, I guess, that benefit of the position. There's other things we have to do first before you go on and try to be someone you're not, you know. You really got to step up to the plate in this before you can start to learn from other people, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's how we met. You contacted me, sure. And that does make sense that you're like, oh, I'm a writer and I work with Ryan Holiday, and it's like, okay, this is random. Like, who is this person contacting me? And then yeah, because if you just make it easy, for me, it's like, yeah, sure, like, why not? You know, you've like come here to where I live, but most people aren't going to do that. So what about you like gave you the confidence or gave you because often when people are looking for jobs, I encourage people to do this all the time. It's like, just ask people for coffee, like, without wanting anything from them. Yeah. But just because and people are like, what? But how would I meet them? Or they do the wrong thing. They go and they just talk about themselves all the time. And it's like, no, just learn about the person. Because people like talking about themselves and they like giving advice. But you have kind of like figured out at a very young age, like, how to meet people, you know, like me, who's like, everyone wants to meet me. But yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Well, so when I first started the position, the editor that I was working with, who was one of probably the best mentors I've ever had. She shaped so much of my writing and just professional career, like, extremely just formative. The first thing, like, she told me to do was, like, you have to read this book, and it was like, I think it was the Dale Carnegie book. It was How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the main lesson of that book is that people like talking about themselves. So if you can play to other people's strengths, they will give you whatever you want, as long as you just don't come outwardly say, like, oh, this is me, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want. But if you kind of talk to them or just make a good connection with them and get to know them a little better, that'll be everything you need to know. even if it wasn't something you had expected, but that will be something that will help you down the line. So that I read that, and then I guess I just kind of took it from there. I was never really afraid of failing, especially in reaching out over like email or anything, because there's no like harsh decline unless they just say like, no, you're a loser, like stop emailing me, like, which would never happen. They would just not respond, and that's okay with me. I'll just like, just do it again. It's just clicking a few buttons, and it's gonna be okay if they don't respond. It was just me taking it, like forcing myself to take action and try to get something out of this while I can, while I'm still young, at least, so I don't look back and go, had a really cool job, but I really wasted it doing something else, or I didn't make the most of it,
Huh. And you specifically worked out like you could use that as leverage for people to then meet you.
Yeah, I think it was like I could use the name brand to just kind of talk to some other people, and it worked for some, but I was never looking for like work or money or anything. I was never trying to, extort the name. I was just trying to connect with all those other people, and like that was just kind of my point. Rather than just being, hey, I'm a university student, I could be like, hey, I do some writing over for these really big brands. I'd love to talk to you more about, creative process and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would still work if you were, like, if you were to me or to whoever, it's like, oh, I'm so interested in this thing that you do. Like, people are busy, but if it's genuine, like, if you're like, I've listened to your podcast and like, it's so cool and this, like, obviously straight away I'm like, oh my God, cool. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, you want to talk about my work. Like,
sure.
And that's kind of works. I mean, yeah, it's just timing and everything. So it can be just like, for anyone listening who wants to try this, you can just be a uni student who's like interested in an author's work or interested in a professional's work. Like, you're an interior designer, I really want to get into that. Like, I'd love to meet you. But yeah, I guess it helps. Yeah. So yeah. It's just, it's like kind of a game, but it's not like a bad thing.
No, there's really not a heavy, like, it's not a win-lose situation. You're not going to lose that much if you don't get a response, or if stuff goes bad, unless you go to meet them and you say something like really offensive or do something bad. Obviously that's a lose, but like otherwise there's no real net negative in this situation. Like, if you're just trying to learn and better yourself, I personally did not see a lose for me in trying to do all this. Obviously, there's a little bit of conflict or stuff we had to mull over along the way, but it worked out in the end and everybody understood.
So have you met lots of interesting people?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of interesting people. I talked to some guys that run a philosophy podcast that are really interesting, super smart, like, and I was trying to like go on the podcast and do stuff with them, but I didn't have a PhD, so I wasn't qualified enough to do that. But we had a really cool conversation about philosophy and just how to merge philosophy with content. That was awesome. I met an author he's a British author. His name's Ben Mercer. He does a lot of TikTok stuff and talks about books. He's a super nice, charismatic guy. And we ran through just kind of more the publishing industry, how that works, and working your way up from self-publishing to traditional, or the benefits of both. So I've met a lot of really cool people, and it's pretty much all been beneficial to me. There's never been any bad interactions I've had.
And what do you hope to get out of all these interactions?
Just to learn something that I didn't know before I started the conversation. Because I feel, especially as like being so young and such like a competitive industry, there's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome at times. That it's like, shouldn't you just be like at school or working internships or something? Like, why, other people could do this better than you. So it's just to really kind of dampen that and learn more about what it is I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how I can make myself better in the process of doing it. Because, I learn about all these other people and how they got there. Ben was a rugby player before he was a writer, so there's so many different stories. And, like...
Wait, is he the guy that was, like, a professional rugby player?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, someone just tweeted the other day sharing like that they love reading. He writes in a newsletter or something.
Yeah, he does.
Cool.
Yeah, he's a really great writer, and he's really charismatic and does a lot of TikTok stuff, a lot of video content, so he's a really great guy.
And you just cold emailed him as well?
Yeah, I emailed him, and then I was in the States at the time. We had a Zoom call because he lives over in London here, but then I met up with him last month, and we got to chatting, and it's been really great. I've learned so much just from all these people that, once again, there's no losing if I'm learning from them, you know.
And people are generally happy to.
Oh, usually, yeah. I mean, occasionally you just get the no response. I've never really gotten a no. It's just they just ghost you. They just don't have time to respond to your email and stuff like this. But generally, once again, as long as you like show an interest in them, or you can provide something to them in this conversation, then they're usually gladly to chat and discuss whatever you want with them. Yeah.
And why did you want to come on the podcast?
This one?
So in general?
Just to have another conversation where I could learn and kind of, explore with, creators in the UK. I mean, we had this great conversation even before we started recording about American politics and just the state of, like, using technology in creating and formulating content. There's so many layers that you don't know. Sure, I can have my own opinions, but like other people are going to have different opinions on that same topic that may shape, how I learn and how I move forward. There's just always something to learn from speaking with people. And I don't think I did a great job of being super interpersonal when I was younger, or maybe in other careers, but I think this is something that I really am like trying to take seriously now and trying to learn from other people and just speak with them and get better at communicating in this way. Because I think it's just so crucial to development in every facet of life,
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're really just driven by curiosity?
Pretty much. I've always been a curious kind of guy in that sense. I was always reading and writing about different stuff and exploring. So, but now that I'm kind of, I guess, have a foothold in my job and I'm doing stuff, I'm even more curious now because there's so many different ways to go about like building an audience or building a community, or even just what to write about, or like there's a lot of talks about like finding like a niche in content. So there's just so much to learn that I had never looked into before because it was never a part of my life before. So now I feel like I'm playing catch up. I really should just start, digging into other people rather than what I see on the internet, because a lot of the times it can be pretty misleading, or it's not stuff that I want to listen to because, as you say, people are trying to sell you stuff and stuff like that. So I just want to dig into other people that are doing it and see what they're learning as well, see who they're talking to, and see what they're reading, because I think that's the best way to go about it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically what I do on this podcast, but like more broadly for like all types of humans.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you see the world?
Mm-hmm.
And so are you still thinking about screenwriting?
No, not anymore. I think unless something came across like my desk, but I don't do that casually anymore. I think I'd rather just go into authoring books and ghostwriting and working in content writing and stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fiction or non-fiction or?
I have obviously more experience in non-fiction, and I think that's where I'd probably start, but I would like to do some fiction along the way. Fiction is just really hard. Fiction is really hard to write, and like it's so different than non-fiction. People go, if you're a good writer, you can make anything work, but there's so many different dynamics between the two that I haven't even dug into yet. So maybe down the line I'd study and try to write some fiction, but for now, stick with non-fiction in that realm at least. Yeah.
And what's like your big vision for your life?
Oh man, that's a big question. Big question. I just want to be able to do something that I want to do. I want to be able to live the life that I want to live. And right now I think that life is writing, but if that changes, then it changes. I just want to be comfortable in pursuing something and living a life with relationships and people that I want to be around and interacting with the ideas that I find interesting, not that are paying the most at the time. So that's what I feel. And right now it's writing, and whether that be, I don't know, writing just rather fiction, nonfiction, or biographies. I even have considered that at times, but it's just being comfortable with what I'm interested in, being able to live the life that I want to. I think that is my main goal, and that's obviously subject to change, but that's how I feel right now at this stage, at least.
And money will just be part of like making that all work rather than like...
Yeah, money is just a part of... Money is not the end goal, I don't think. I mean, I don't think anybody who pursues a career... Actually, that's not true. A lot of people do pursue creative careers for a lot of money and fame and stuff, but I don't think that's ever been a part. It's just going to be using that as a tool to allow me to live this life rather than it being the end goal, and that's what I'm chasing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. And then do you know where you want to live ultimately?
I have no clue. I'm pretty open to wherever. So I think I tend to lean towards like bigger cities more because there's just more to do and there's more people to like be around and like more creative minded to share stuff with in communities. But no, I have no clue right now.
But somewhere in the US.
Yeah, somewhere in the US probably, I think. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It is exciting. Maybe someday down the line I'll come and live in Europe or the UK or something, but I think while I'm young at least I would like to stay in the US, yeah.
Because you finish your degree in December.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might move or stay in DC.
Yeah, it depends what I'm doing with my job and how the writing's going and everything. But yeah, I think I'd probably end up moving somewhere, just because DC. I mean, unless I get a job there, but I think I'd probably end up moving somewhere. But once again, it all depends. It's all speculative at this point.
And wait, last question, kind of political question. Are you
Sure.
worried about the direction of the country or where things are going? Or can you kind of like protect, like be in your writing bubble and it's like stuff can be like burning outside?
I think I could be in my writing bubble if I wanted to, but I don't think I want to. I think that's just... I feel too like passionate, or I have too many opinions on like what a good like political system looks like and like how much I like love my country and want my country to be healthy in that way. So I think I could, but I don't think I will. I'm not... There's a part of me that's worried and there's a part of me that's not worried. I mean, I have a lot of faith in people in the country, which a lot of people don't have, which is, I mean, very tough to hear a lot of people just be so negative about, their own community members. But I mean, it's hard to look at everything and not be a little worried about the state of affairs and kind of how policies are progressing in a certain direction. And it's hard to kind of turn a blind eye to that, especially in my opinion. I think I grew up kind of privileged and maybe had a blind eye to it while I was a kid, but now that I have kind of met all these different people and have interacted and kind of been opened up to so many like different injustices of just the world in general, I think turning a blind eye would be the worst thing that I can do. So I definitely don't want to live in a bubble, but I think I'm not worried, but that is subject to change in the future. I think there is a way out of this, but how to do that, I think you just have to convince people, or you have to make people willing to like want to get out of it, because a lot of people are not willing to cooperate with other people in the country, or are not willing to even have political discourses where they disagree with each other. Disagreement is almost like treated as an injustice in America. So I think you just have to make people understand that how do I even say this? Like, you have to make them want to get out of it, because right now people don't. A lot of people don't, and they're just willing to stay in their bubbles, whether it be economically or politically. People don't want to, leave what's comfortable to them. And it's probably the most daunting task in, the last 100. Actually, no, it's still not true. But it's a very daunting task in the history of America, but, like, it's necessary. But I have hope that something can turn around in the future. But that just might be me being young and naive, I guess.
No, it's good to have hope and be optimistic.
Yeah.
Okay, last 3 questions.
Sure.
Unless there's anything else you want to say.
No.
Which book has had the biggest impact on you?
Oh boy. In my lifetime. I think probably Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein did, because it was released right at that time of that kind of tipping point of American, not only politics, but culture. I think it was just so formative to my beliefs and my curiosity and just kind of my, view of the world. I don't think I would have nearly the same perspective on anything if I hadn't read that book. In that sense, there's so much of an importance on, like, history and culture and, like, intersectionality that was just really changed my whole perspective. So I think that's probably the book that changed me, especially at such a young age.
How do you stay grounded?
How do I stay grounded?
That's weird. I feel like young people, that's not a question for young people because you're just, like, doing your thing. It's more for adults where we have to keep it together. Yeah. Adult, I mean, not that you're not an adult,
Sure.
Although I guess in the US it's like 21 you become an adult.
I guess I'm technically... Yeah, well, yeah, it's weird.
You're a minor.
In a way, yeah. I mean, I can vote and stuff. I think just I cannot, drink alcohol in the U.S. But in terms of staying, I think I surround myself with people that try to keep me grounded, or at least try to, give me different perspectives. And I try to read a lot, or I try not to limit myself in any sense of my life, whether it be just taking different classes or reading different stuff or, listening to these different podcasts or anything. I try to not limit myself, and, especially, like, my girlfriend keeps me really accountable in holding different perspectives and making sure I'm not, forming my own bubble. Because I think that's just such a natural capacity of people. We just so love to be comfortable. But, it's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable that we have to do. And that's why I think you shouldn't limit yourself to what you consume or who you speak to or where you even go, because there's just so many, unconscious, even biases that people have, that we need to just get comfortable with being uncomfortable or recognizing these things about ourselves. And
last question, what 3 words describe the best version of you?
My best version of me. Okay. Like an ideal version of myself, or just me right now? Whatever. Just 3 words.
Yeah, like the person you want to show up as.
Sure. I think I want to be curious. This is something that's really important to me. I think I want to be respectful, because it's just such an important facet of building relationships and communicating. And I think I want to be... no, this is a tough one. There's so many options that I have here. I think thoughtful. I think thoughtful is the one that I'll go with. In every sense of the word, whether it be, intuitive or compassionate in terms of thinking of other people. But I think thoughtful is the one I'd go with.
Cool.
Yeah.
And where can people find you if you want to be found?
Sure. Yeah. All my writings over at my website, andrewfleig.net. Same name as in the podcast, but that's where most of my writing is. I have a newsletter there that goes out every single week. Different storytellers, lessons, and wisdom from people that I talk to or research. And then you can also find me on social media with the same handles, the same name, and yeah, that's where I can be found.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.